Monday on Enough Rope, delighted to have one of the legends of Australian rock and roll, Chrissy Amphlett. Chrissy, tell the people at home what they can expect to see.
I'm going to sing.
Yes.
And I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to talk about a lot of things. I'm going to talk about the book, and I'm going to surprise you.
And shock.
And shock and
Dismay.
Dismay.
I don't want to put words in her mouth, but Chrissy Amphlett, Monday night, 9:35, Enough Rope. See you then. Thank you, good evening, and welcome to Enough Rope. Charisma. It's what separates the merely talented performer from the unforgettable. My first guest is in the latter category. In her days as the singer of the Divinyls, she showed the way for the Australian rock chick, powerful, intense, dare I say it, ballsy. Here's a sample. Please welcome the owner of all that charisma, Chrissy Amphlett. I shouldn't start with shoe talk, but I'm going to. They are extraordinary boots.
I'm so glad I packed them. I nearly didn't pack them, and I'm really glad, because I was wondering what shoes I was going to wear.
I've just worn these modest numbers today, but I actually have a pair of interview shoes which come up to here as well.
Oh, really? Really?
No, Michael Parkinson was so jealous when he saw them.
They look comfortable, though.
Yes, they're sensible. I know, because I've chatted to them for some time. Now, you live in America now. You only came back to Australia a few days ago. What's the first thing you notice about Australia when you come back home?
I love flying into Sydney. It's the most beautiful city to fly into. And there's no people.
How do you eat in America? Because every time I go to America, even if you buy fruit, they ask, do you want fries with that? They don't actually have food in America. They have a lot of chemicals that they wrap in food-like things and put on a plate.
Well, I go to the supermarket. I love going to the supermarket with my husband, because he's always on the road and I travel a lot too, and it's a really nice thing we do together. I really like going shopping. And he's a real foodie, and then he's really got me eating more. But if he's not there, I tend to not look after myself quite as much. But he makes sure there's breakfast, lunch and dinner, and he gives me that food structure, which is really good.
Can I bring your cousin here, Patricia Amphlett, and your mum Mary is here. Welcome to you both. In Geelong, when Chrissy was growing up, she was a bit of a wild girl, wasn't she?
Yes.
Willful.
Willful.
What's the definition of willful?
I don't know if I was really wild in those days. I was quite shy, but I was very adventurous, and to connect with people, I would sing. I felt at some deep level, I felt special, even though probably I had low self-esteem and everything. Somehow I felt good because I had this vocal thing that kept me.
You said you're adventurous, and it's a rocky path to start on. One of the first public performances for you was in the musical Let My People Come, which for a shy girl, you were playing a porn queen, right? Linda Lips?
Linda Lips.
Yes. Can you describe your role?
Well, I had to fight. Well, I didn't have a song in the show. I had to fight for a song. But anyway, they cast me as Linda Lips, and I was the porn queen. And we had to take our clothes off in it, which I didn't care. It was a gig, and it was 8 shows a week, and it was my Shakespeare. And Mum was supportive, and I didn't tell my father.
Did he come and see it?
Nope.
You saw it, Mary. What did you think of it?
I loved it. And I thought
It was funny.
It was funny, and everyone was so good in it. And I just saw the funny side of it. And
What was your outfit, Chrissy?
Okay, Linda Lips. I was, okay. It's so sleazy. It's amazing, you know, and before that, before doing this show, I was so modest. And then I remember the day we all had to take our clothes off. We got all that over. Anyway, Linda Lips, I had this corset on and these suspenders and stockings, and I had rollers in my pubic hairs. Big ones. But all of a sudden I was accepted into this new world. And they thought I was a little different, but, you know, and then I got a song in the show. Well, I understudied this song in the show.
What was the song?
Come in my mouth.
I'm getting a sense of what this production was. It was like the anti-Jesus Christ Superstar, wasn't it?
But it was funny.
How come you...
But actually, I had to fight for that song. Didn't I?
Mary, do you still hum a few bars when you think that?
all the time.
All the
Andrew.
time, yeah.
Every day.
How come your dad... You never wanted your dad to go, right? You never wanted Jim to go. Why was
Oh,
that?
I'd be Dad was very conservative, and to see his daughter up there, it would have been terribly embarrassing for him.
And for you?
No, I mean, it was extraordinarily liberating being naked on stage. And I really enjoyed up there shocking people. Mm. All that was sort of developed, and seeing people's faces and embarrassing people, and I sort of got a taste for it. And I felt just strong and powerful, but I felt really good about my body. You know, and it's so weird, but from that show, a lot of things came out of that show.
Right,
and it's really weird, my pathway. But,
and it did open doors. You ended up in a production of Jesus Christ Superstar.
No. Oh, yeah, I did. But I did. No, you're right.
Are we on the same life?
Yeah, but this will run out at St George's Leagues.
Yeah, this is the one you were understudying Marsha.
Marsha.
And because this speaks to your ambition. She had a car accident one night, right?
Well, we were driving along and we could see out of the back her Jaguar, and Shane and I were sort of just driving along getting to the theatre, and she came here and all of a sudden she took off. And we were watching her take off. And then she landed. The car didn't blow up into flames or anything, and we looked and she was all right. But we hit the gas because we thought, and Shana yelled, "You're on!" So we sped to the theatre. I mean, the car didn't burst into flames.
Sure, so she was probably fine.
But I had to get there because I was the understudy. I was Mary, right?
Yeah.
And this was my big moment because Marsha never took nights off. So I get there and all the keys were wrong. They were her keys. And it was just terrible. I was going, I don't know how to lie. And it was just awful. You know, that's what you do. You have the, you know, and it was my moment.
But it's interesting, that drive, I don't mean Marsha's, I mean and that sense of destiny, that sense of I've got something special. And you're in your early 20s when you met Mark McEntee, with whom you formed the Divinyls. Mm. And that was the first time you'd really met a truly kindred spirit,
Kindred
wasn't it?
spirit. We both had this same taste about things. We had this similar taste, and we didn't like solos, and we didn't like vibrato, and you know, and it's difficult to find that combination, to find two spirits that really will work together. And you know, we believed in each other, and we had this belief, and as we started writing, we just thought that it was the best thing ever, and we just became this gang of two.
One of your managers, Vince Lovegrove, said the best performances you ever gave were when you and Mark were at each other's throats. Was that true?
Not actually each other's throat, but it just added to the drama. And rock and roll, really good rock and roll, and is full of drama. And if Mark and I weren't getting on, or someone else in the band, it all would be put back into the music, and there'd be this drama, and microphones would be thrown down, and roadies had been kicked up the bum, and whatever. But all the drama just perpetuated this really incredible, intense performance. And the audience loved it because they would all be there getting off too and watching what was going on, and it was really cathartic for them too. And you know, it was really exciting. It was unpredictable. It was dangerous.
It wasn't always like that. As you said, when you started out, and people might find this hard to believe, you were a very shy performer. And then you came up with this, you mentioned the schoolgirl, this persona of the schoolgirl. Now, for many people, putting on a mask hides who they are. Was it the opposite for you? Did it allow you to be who you really were?
Well, I sort of needed something to free me up, because I'd stand back at the drums with Harv, and then, and often sort of the back, and I just couldn't, I sort of thought the audience was my enemy, and I'd stand there like this, and I just couldn't free myself. I couldn't connect. I'm singing these songs, I'm through with hanging around all the boys in town, and I felt really vulnerable because it was true. But I needed something, some sort of wall to separate me between singing these really personal lyrics. So I went out and bought a school uniform, and I put suspenders and stockings on. And it just gave me this character that freed me up to sort of have a bit of this character, and this girl that was this Centrinians girl that I could just offset this vulnerable me. And it just gave me this wall and this costume to express myself with. And all of a sudden I'm running up and down the audience, the stage, and this whole persona emerged.
Patricia, you really were nodding assent then when you saw Chrissy on stage with this remarkable performance, this cross between a whirlwind and a banshee. What did you see?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it for reasons that are a few years earlier.
You had to be a good girl. I mean, what era you grew up? You were perfect.
You know, it was Laurel Lee, who was a singer in the bandstand days, who said that you know, the weird part of growing up on bandstand, or growing up in our era, and we were pioneers of our era, not that we realised that, was that all of the young male singers had, generally speaking, were allowed to, or had, kind of wild images, or, you know, reckless young men. Whereas the women, we female singers were, you know, virginal and pristine and ever so sweet, girl next door. And,
which you were.
Oh, thank you. Maybe. And that there was such a difference, but that reflected society at the time as well. So I could feel that it was all terribly unfair, but that's how life was in the 60s, as I said.
So when you saw Chrissy
when Chrissy came along, I thought, you beauty, you know, she's stood up to everybody. She is fronting a band. Yeah, I mean, I'm extremely proud of her for many reasons, but for that reason, she wouldn't have known, and probably I didn't either, the effect that would have had for the industry. She was the first one to do that.
When you created the schoolgirl, you said, I wanted to create a monster, and your manager, Vince, later described you as a monster, an aggressive monster at times, off stage as well.
Vince was really clever with the press. He was a journalist, and he knew how to start rumours. He started a lot of things about me. He was really clever.
Anything you regret?
Well, what?
What was it?
I'm sure he started the urinating on stage thing. And then I would squat, like some of the positions I would do, and just to taunt everybody, I would squat. And so many people swore they've seen me do it, or sworn me do all sorts of things on stage. I've got these legendary things, and I can't remember doing them. I mean, maybe when I was all sort of carried away, and a lot of girl singers do it by accident, by the way.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's physically, you know, and I was throwing myself around and, you know, and drinking lots of water and everything. And so, is this all right? Is this getting really too much information? But come on, let's get real, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying every girl, but I mean, you know, I was pretty full on and feral and everything. Vince was really good at building that sort of legendary person that I was. It's all his fault.
You said you felt you had to live up to it, though, and
I think eventually, and the lines blurred, and you know, that's what the audience expected, and I was to deliver, and I wasn't going to let them down, and you know, and I had to compete against all these loud instruments and be bigger and louder, and if I was less so, they wouldn't have had a prissy girl up there. So it was all about that, look at me, and it's all posturing and look at me, and, you know, that's what a rock and roll band is. I mean, it was very enabling because everybody's egging me on for more, and I was going to give them more. And, you know, before you know it, you're just dedicating your whole, you know, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is for this performance and this person. And I'm this little thing, but you know, I was doing it and living this, and I don't know how I did it for so long.
Did you ever start to think of yourself in the third person, come home and shut the door and think, I just wish Chrissy Amphlett would go away, would be quiet?
No. Not till later, I think. It was so much fun. I mean, it's only, but it was really fun. And we'd get on the bus after the gig at night, and we would just party all night because we were full of adrenaline, all pumped up for the gigs. We'd fall off the bus at 6 o'clock in the morning, book into the hotel. Then I'd have 2 hours sleep, and then I'd have to go into some radio station and do press then, and maybe be a little grumpy.
Was it lovely having that licence to be grumpy, though?
Yeah, and everyone just expected it, and it was cool. I was very enabled, and that's what they expected because that's rock and roll.
Did you bring that home? Did you lose the art of being nice to people because you didn't have to be?
Yeah, I was tired, and I lost sight of family, friends, because you don't have time. That whole old, you know, friendships went by the wayside because you don't have time, family, everything. And then, I mean, Mum wouldn't have had an idea of what I was doing.
Is that right, Mary? Really?
True.
So when Chrissy came home, I don't know if she came home much during the height of the Divinyls, but if she did...
She was a lot softer.
What do you mean?
She behaved herself when she came home.
Is that right? Wild child, Divinyls lead singer, comes home and tidies up the
Butter
bedroom.
wouldn't melt into that.
I was tired, though. I usually go straight to bed.
Exactly.
So this was like a homemade rehab clinic.
Oh, it was lovely. You know,
Yeah.
my parents, you know, and if I went there, they'd bring me breakfast in bed, and, you know, they were gentle, and I didn't have to sit there and, you know, it was very unconditional. I mean,
So when you saw Chrissy on the telly as this much wilder person, what did you think?
An act.
Just an act? Was it an act you liked?
Not really.
Oh, we're getting...
But I knew what she was like anyway.
So you just knew it was an act and that's what
Yes.
counted? Would it be fair to say that it was fun but you weren't necessarily happy?
Sometimes it was, but gradually, I think, as probably I started drinking more, and you know, the lines got blurred, and I was tired and I was hungover. I wasn't happy. That as my spirit started to become diminished, because, you know, I was putting out my light a bit, I think, with the alcohol.
When did you realise you were an alcoholic?
I think when I didn't realise alcohol was the problem. I thought everything else was. I didn't realise that, you know, the debts or... It's funny, you always put alcohol last. You don't really quite realise, you know, that's the last thing, because that's your crutch and you don't want to let that go. And if you think, oh, and you still hang on to it. But I think when it was Christmas Day, do you remember that? And I was at my sister's, and my mother was there and my sister was there, and it was 11 o'clock, and I was starting to drink champagne, and Mum kept taking the champagne and putting it over here, and then I'd go, and Mum would go. And I started giving all my jewellery away at the... Oh. Anyway, I was... Because I was $1 million in debt, okay, this day, and I hadn't told, and no one knew, and everything was on my shoulders, and I was terrified, and you know, nothing was working, the alcohol wasn't working, and in fact I was having anxiety. The alcohol was causing anxiety attacks by this point. And there was the almighty fight. This is a very Christmas Day family sort of thing, right?
Not unfamiliar, I wouldn't think.
And I know this sounds like a really pretentious religious experience, but all I remember is it's coming in and out of this blackout and this fight somehow going between my good self and my bad self, and this fight going on, and I still had this sort of this dignity, and that was there, and it was fighting with this other, but I was out of control, and all the pressure I was under and everything, and I remember these white wings and these black wings fluttering, and it was, and my sister bringing in the family doctor, and then my sister sitting on top of me on the bed, and he gave me an injection to calm me down. And then he said, she's down, and all of a sudden I came up again, like Linda Blair, and I bit him on the arm. And he tells his story to this day, by the way. He's very proud of that story, that I bit him on the arm. And then he had me in a headlock, evidently, and I went down, and I went down for about... I mean, this is pretty personal stuff, isn't it? But this is what happens. And this was my breaking point. This is my bottom. This was my bottom. And when I woke up, I wondered why everybody was restraining me. But I felt very exhausted. But something in me had surrendered. I'd just given up. And at that point, giving in, I was somehow teachable, or I was ready to try and deal with a different way of handling my life, what I had to deal with, which was debts and everything. But I had to get to that point, and I had to bottom.
You were fortunate. You hit bottom, but you also had an ally, and you talked about Charlie, who's now your husband, a man who came to work with the Divinyls as a drummer, and who you eventually fell in love with. How did he get through through this facade of this sort of scary, angry woman?
He loved me. He saw also the person my mother saw. You know, that there was still Chrissy there, the gentle, you know, there was that person. But I remember him saying to me one day, he said, Chrissy, there's not room for 3 people in this relationship. And that third person was alcohol. And that person, you know, and that sort of hit home. But Charlie, Charlie wouldn't have stuck around, I don't think. You know, no one would have stuck around. I would have been alone and very lonely. And I just sort of woke up, and I had to, first of all, learn some humility, because if I learnt some humility, I would be teachable. And that was the first thing that I had to learn. And, you know, it's hard when you're a rock and roll singer and you're very enabled and everybody's adoring you and you're telling you wonderful and everything, you get a really big head.
So how do you learn humility? Where does that start?
Well, I went to this man, a doctor, who had treated a lot of alcoholics and sobered up a lot of alcoholics. And he said, Chrissy, you've got a very serious disease. You're in the second stage. There's 3 stages. You're hanging by the second, and you're about to go into the third. You haven't gone into the third yet, but you're hanging. And he scared the hell out of me. I got scared.
What's the third stage that you were...
I think the third stage is when you really go into that sort of everyday drinking, starts really affecting your brain. Well, you know, real fall down, tragic. You know, I could have been carried out of nightclubs everywhere, you know, restaurant, you know, really embarrassing. And for a female, it's even worse, you know, it's not... And then he said I need to go to a 12-step program. And when I walked in there, it was hard because everybody knew who I was. But I was determined that I had to learn, so everyone knew who I was. But I sat down and I listened to them. And I did everything that I was told to do, and I did it. And my husband was really supportive, and
What you're saying is so impressive, because not just what you've just told us personally, but you paid off your debts. You could have declared yourself bankrupt, but you didn't. You worked your way through it and paid them off. And you turned around and you ended up playing and absolutely blowing people away. In the middle of all of this, the role of Judy Garland in The Boy from Oz, a role you had to work very, very hard to get.
She never got the chance to get what I got also, because in those days they didn't have all of that recovery stuff. No one knew in the show or anything.
That you were going through that. Did you know, Mary, that Chrissy was fighting this fight?
I did.
You didn't know the depths, though, did you?
No, I didn't know that.
She didn't know the amount of
Did you not
depth.
know? Because mothers often have a way of knowing when their kids are in trouble in a way their kids never suspect.
Yes, I know, but I was so happy that she had the stability to get through the alcohol.
But I had
problem.
this sort of like, I had all this built in, I had these tools. I was given these tools in that year before I went into rehearsals. I learnt to be normal. I learnt in this environment to kind of put myself back together and listen and be humble and to be teachable and not to butt in. Have I butted in much today?
Not at all. You can't butt into your own interview.
No.
No, this is yours.
It's all about me.
What was that opening night like? When
What
you
was
played
like what?
The opening night when you played Judy Garland, which was a form of coming out for you.
Well, you know, this was the first time standing in the wings that I wasn't having a quick nip. And I had to do it, you know, I had to use my inner strength, my inner life. It was a wonderful thing to achieve for me, and to do it soberly.
Your dad was there too, wasn't he?
Well, he was in Melbourne. He went to the Melbourne one because at that point he'd been diagnosed with cancer and he wasn't strong enough.
What was his reaction when he saw you after the show?
You've made it now. Now you've made it. That to Dad, that. And I said, well, what did you think? He said, 9 out of 10. And he whizzed me around the dance floor, and it was just the two of us. It was just beautiful.
Yeah.
You know? And then I got back to the dressing room and Charlie was there. Charlie secretly flown and he was applauding me.
Wow.
And he'd come and that was really nice too.
Mary, what do you think of your daughter, where she is now in her life?
I'm very proud of her, Andrew, and she has the stability. She's come through all this and she's up there now. And that's a wonderful thing for me.
You're about to sing I Touch Myself, your most successful song internationally, acoustically, first time you've done it. Do you feel emotional about that prospect?
It's going to be interesting what happens emotionally and what comes out, because it's a bit different. It's going to be presented in a different way. It's a credit to the song that it's a really good song, and I think you can do it in a lot of different ways, and that is what makes a good song, that you can interpret it. And that's what I love about this song, because really it's, you know, everybody has always seen it in one way, but I see the beauty of this song. It's about it's about both of those sides, our higher self and our lower self, and our sexuality and everything.
I introduced you by referring to you as a strong woman. I obviously didn't know the half of it. Chrissy Amphlett, thank you.
Thank you.
watching Enough Rope, and yes, we have a website, and here it is, abc.net.au/enough-rope. You can find out all about the show. You can suggest a guest. You can suggest yourself for show and tell if you would like. Next week on the show, we have the legendary Jane Goodall.
I'm a female, you're a male, so you're dominant, I'm afraid, in chimp society. And I approach you slightly nervously, and
Yes.
I give a little... and you reach out and pat my head, and then... That was totally inappropriate. The female would be terrified.
That's Jane Goodall next week on Enough Rope. Don't miss that one. It's about time to go. To take us out tonight, singing for the first time, solo and acoustic, the famous song I Touch Myself, accompanied by Charlie Owen. Here is Chrissy Amphlett. Until next week, good night. See you.
I love myself. I want you to love me. When I feel down, I want you above me. I search myself. I want you to find me. I forget myself. I want you to remind me. I don't want anybody else. When I think about you, I touch myself. Oh, I don't want anybody else. Oh no, oh no, oh no. You're the one who makes me come running. You're the sun who makes me shine. When you're around, I'm always laughing. I want to make you mine. I close my eyes, I see you before me. Think I would die if you were to ignore me. I could say just how much I adore you. I get down on my knees, I'd do anything for you. I don't want anybody else. When I think about you, I touch myself. Oh, I don't want anybody else. No, oh no, I know. I love myself. I want you to love me. When I feel down, I want you above me. I search myself. I want you to find me. I forget myself. I want you to remind me. I want you. I don't want anybody else. And when I think about you, I touch myself. Ooh, ooh, ooh. I don't want anybody else. When I think about you, I touch myself. Oh, I don't want anybody else. When I think about you, I touch myself. 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 I honestly do. I touch myself. When I think about you.